The presentation you are about to view will be discussing 3-slot payphones, also known as triple slot payphones, or in the 1940s back to turn of the century, they referred to them as coin collectors, depending on who manufactured the phone and the time period. The objective of this video is not to go into the technical details of how these phones work. We're looking at a multitude of different types of payphones made by the pink one is an automatic electric, then the black one without a dial is a Western Electric, the black one with the touchtone pad is a Northern Electric, and then the beige phone over on the right side is an automatic electric, and then the chrome phone next to it is a automatic electric. Automatic Electric manufactured a multitude of payphones for different applications. Far more than this video is going to go into detail. I have plenty of videos that discusses some of the individual phones for what they were designed to do for their day. The intent of this video is for a person who's just recently purchased a 3-slot phone that would like to put it in their man cave or in their home or something along that lines. Due to the age of the 3-slot payphones, most every single one of them has been messed with once, twice, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 times since they were removed from service. One of the phone companies, primarily the Bell system, took their 3-slot phones and gutted out most of the insides and converted them to be single line phones that they sold in their phone center stores. There was also companies who would refurbish payphones into just standard single line phones. The coin mechanisms were most part removed out of all of the phones. If you have a 3-slot payphone, the odds are you cannot put it back to original. The cost to do that is phenomenal. They're missing some hard to get parts, and depending on the vintage and the manufacturer of the phone, you may spend a lot of time looking for the parts or paying for it. Now and again, a complete phone will come up on eBay. They're rare, but they do happen. For the serious phone collectors, they want the phones restored back to what they were when they left the factory. With the Western Electric and Northern Electric, because those two companies, AT&T, the original AT&T, had ownership in the Bell system manufacturing, which was Western Electric, and a minority ownership in Northern Electric, which was Bell of Canada. So the parts are interchangeable. The parts, for the most part, are the same. The one big exception is Canada had a different size of coin versus the United States, so the coin mix may be specifically for Canada or combination US and Canadian coins if the phone company was on the border. I can't get into details on that because I'm not 100% sure how far reaching that was. With the automatic electric phones, again, automatic electric made probably 8 or 10 different models depending on the phone lines they were going to be connected to. So again, that's why I don't want to get into the details of how they work because there's too many variations for this particular video. I will show the inside of a pink phone that was refurbished to be made a home use phone only, and then the beige phone over between the black touchtone phone and the chrome phone is still original, which is quite rare. It was apparently used as a test phone in a central office, and it has not been messed with during its lifetime. I do not have the correct vault door, which would have been beige on it because it was missing the vault door. However, I have a chrome vault door. Regarding the keys to these payphones, the top payphones had fairly common keys. Automatic electric primarily was a 29S lock. However, some telephone companies had their own locks with their own key code. And even though I have not run across that with my small collection of phones, I know they did exist. The Bell system had different types of locks. Of course, a lot of the locks can be interchanged amongst the phones depending on the age of the phone. They had a 10L or a 10H type of a lock. Northern Electric had their own locks because the Bell system, even though AT&T had ownership in them, between the US and Canada, it was still two different phone companies. So the Canadian locks would most likely be keyed differently. They're interchangeable, but just with a different key code. The keys for these phones are fairly common on eBay and relatively inexpensive, probably $25 to $30. Of course, there's no guarantee when you have a locked phone and buy a key that that's going to be the correct key for that phone. Also, some of the later keys that were cut and made do not work very well in the locks, depending on how much wear the locks had and so forth. So you may have to fiddle with it a little bit to get the upper housing off. Most of the 3-slot payphones can be accessed from the rear by removing the screws, which you're basically disassembling the phone to get to it. Doing that then means you can get to the vault and to the upper housing. The only exception is if you had a phone that was stolen and it still has the black backboard plate attached to the phone, then you cannot get access to the screws because the phone is attached to the back plate, which is covering the screws. At that point, you have a problem on your hands. Not a super big problem, but it's going to take some time to deal with. Trying to restore these phones back to original, the coin hoppers, depending on the type of hopper, was damaged for the most part, so that the coins could either go into the coin box and it becomes a safe, or into the coin return and simply refund your money, depending on how the phone was set up. There's also, as you can tell, between the two black phones, there's one that's got a F handset and the other one's got a G handset. So the hook switches are different from the phones. Also, if you have a true, honest-to-goodness automatic electric payphone, there is a rib on the handset that was unique only to automatic electric, as where the remaining phones, depending on the model handset, would be flat, such as your common rotary dial desk phone and so forth. To make a phone like this into a single-line phone is relatively simple. Also, the phones that you're looking at, such as the black touch-tone phone, is a complete telephone, as it's got the network inside of the phone. I believe you need a bell box if you wanted a ringer. The pink phone, if it was restored to its original condition, below it would be a bell box with an induction coil or a network, depending on what it was set up for. So some of these phones required additional components. And again, depending on the age, the manufacturer, and what service the phone was providing would determine what was needed, if it was self-contained or not. The payphones become very complex very quickly, because of all of the different technical aspects that's going on. The majority of the payphones had additional equipment located in the central office to make it work. The simplest payphone was a post-pay payphone that worked on line reversal, and that was very common amongst the small mom and pop telephone companies and co-ops. The majority of the Bell system telephones were on central office coin box lines that made the phone work. The manual phone that has no dial, you just simply go off hook and it lights a light on a switchboard, and the operator does all of the functions such as completing the call and then telling you how much money is needed. And I do have a video in my switchboard collection that shows some of the operations. So I will open up a couple of the phones and show the inside so that you can see what the phones look like. Inside of the pink phone that has been converted for home use. The top black device, it's got a transformer looking unit, is an induction coil for a Western Electric phone. The pink phone is made by Automatic Electric, so that is not correct. Also down below is an ITT ringer put in where the coin relay could be, unless this was a post-pay phone, then which it was not needed at the time. So to put this back to original, I would need to put in a correct induction coil, either in the phone or in the bell box, remove the ITT ringer and put in a relay, or keep this as a post-pay payphone. This is the coin mechanism inside the upper housing. It has been stripped of the components that was needed in this phone. There would have been a transmitter connected to the coin mech, so when a coin was deposited, it would couple that information to the phone line. So the wiring is gone, the resistor's gone, the transmitter's gone. Basically, this unit, for all practical intent, is just parts only. Fortunately, there is a fair amount of these units with all of the components needed. This is the look of the lock inside the payphone. This is a 29S type lock. Here is the inside of an original, non-modified Automatic Electric phone. It has the AE induction coil, the terminal strip, and then it has the correct coin relay in it. This coin relay would be used for collecting and returning the coin on a coin box trunk. This is a functional phone, and this will be made to operate the correct way. And then, of course, below is where the cash box would be. And the phone, this needs to be repainted, but anyway, the phone was in pretty darn nice shape. Quite pleased to have it. The inside of the AE coin mechanism. This is set up for 10-cent service because it has a relay here for the nickel, 2 nickels deposit. Also, you'll notice that it's got all of the wiring. It has the transmitter for the coin tones to be transmitted to the operator. So this is a complete mechanism that has not been messed with. There are 2 different types of vault doors. The particular vault door we're looking at is an Automatic Electric because of the type of a lock keyhole. This vault door has a Western Electric lock in it, and it would have been a vault door used on most likely Bell system phones. Here's what the ringer boxes would look like. The one on the left is a Western Electric subset of the late 50s, 60s, and 70s, even into the 80s. The one on the right is an Automatic Electric ringer box. These are the covers for the correct ringer boxes below. There is a series of payphones that I will not discuss that were made by Gray, and they were the very early 3-slot phones. They're quite rare, they're quite expensive, and they would require their own video to cover all of the differences in that. So they do exist, but the more common ones of the 60s, 70s is what I'm covering in this video. The green payphone is a Western Electric 234. It has the network actually in the upper housing of the phone. So the green box below it only needs to be a ringer box. There is no need for a network or induction coil because that's in the phone. It was kind of a self-contained phone minus the ringer. The touch-tone phone that's on the left is a Western Electric 10-button phone. These are absolutely out of this world, ultra rare phones. They were in incredibly limited production, especially with the 10-button touch-tone pad, and these things are quite expensive. It has a network built into it as well, so the box below would be a ringer box. Most of your 3-slot Western Electric and Northern Electric payphones would be model 233. Those were the absolute most common phones, and they did require a network subset. In 2020, because these subsets are becoming difficult to acquire and expensive, and most people are not concerned about how authentic the phone is, you can use automatic electric boxes or Western Electric boxes mixed with the AE phones, Western phones, and etc. A lot of your phones that were made for home use is just made up of parts from a lot of different manufacturers to be just absolutely a single line phone. And there's really not much value in them from a collecting point of view. The phones that become quite valuable are the original ones, and of course the touch-tone one over on the left is a very valuable phone. When I showed you the black touch-tone phone that was in the middle, those are somewhat common, as well as the chrome payphones that has touch-tone pads. Those are quite common, but all of those phones were done way after the original phone was made. As touch-tone service became more desired, the manufacturers would retrofit the phones to make them more desirable for the telephone companies to put out on the street corners and inside of restaurants and lobbies of hotels and so forth. So touch-tone phones do exist. There's far more rotary phones than touch-tone, but they do exist. So depending on what a person is trying to do, if you just simply want a 3-slot phone because it looks neat, and you want it for home use, there's a gazillion of them out there. If you desire to restore it to its original function, that's going to be a challenge. And then if you want it to actually work, you will need an auxiliary controller, which they do come up on eBay occasionally, payphone controllers. The coin relays that's inside of these phones, and I will show one more coin relay towards the end of this video. The early generation ones has got 2 windings on it and a bunch of contacts. Those are incredibly difficult to make them work because so many of them have been damaged due to improper handling, people who thought they knew what they were doing that didn't, people trying to make them do something they were never designed to do. And if you're trying to make the payphone work as a 3-slot phone with the coin phone controller, putting in a new hopper with a 1A type of a relay or the automatic electric equivalent, and they are not interchangeable, then those are the best relays to use. There's also one additional thing on the Western Electric and Northern Electric. There's a relay that's got 4 screw terminals versus the normal 1A and the modern AE single slot, which is only 2 screw terminals. The difference between it is the ones with the 4 screw terminals shorts out the dial so that unless the coin was actually deposited in the phone, even if you can get dial tone, you cannot rotary dial because the dial is being shorted out until a coin has been deposited. With your single slot, you lose that, your single coil relay that is just 2 screws only, you do not have that function. So you can disable the 4-screw turner by simply disconnecting one of the leads off of it, and you need the schematic to tell you which number that is. And the correct schematics for most of these phones do exist in the Telephone Collectors International website. If you do a Google search for payphone schematics, you'll probably come up with a train car full of them. And again, you need to know what kind of a phone you're working with, and if they've been messed with over their lifetime since they've been removed, you can have a real challenge on your hand. And again, I'm not going into super detail on how that stuff worked. The inside of a Western Electric 233G. This telephone does not have an induction coil in it or a network, so that is down below. It has a coin relay with only 2 screws for its function, which this requires a special phone line. This has a relay marked 1A. If it was an automatic electric relay, which would not fit inside of this phone because it's a different hopper, would have a big orange tag that says warning, do not push on most of the AE relays. Not necessarily all, but most. This is the best type of a relay for making it work with such a stands payphone controller or any other methods that people have come up with. I have the correct equipment to make this work in my central office, and there's videos of that under the 1C payphone and other videos I've got under the payphone category. In the 3-slot phones, regardless of their Western or AE, Northern, etc., the coin relays are frequently removed, and then there's a flap in the hopper to divert the coin one direction or the other. A lot of times they've broken off the parts inside of that. If you have a hopper that's been disassembled or they've broke the parts off of, you just have a piece of junk. Close-up of a very rare Western Electric 1232, I believe. This is a refurbished Northern Electric phone. This is a 233. The only thing I have left to do is put the retaining ring on with the DESI card for the phone. This works on a special phone line. The touch-tone chrome phone we're looking at is a phone that was made up of an assortment of parts from different manufacturers. This was done by the secondary market to make just modern touch-tone phones for generic use. There was no loyalty to any one manufacturer. Whatever parts they had, if they could make them work, they did. Here is the wall mount backboard that the 3-slot would hang on. This is a fairly modern backboard. Particular one is for Western Electric, but you can hang Western, Northern, or automatic electric on it. This particular casting does not have the bottom piece for the ringer subset. If it did, it would be about 8 inches longer, and you would mount the phone on top and the subset below. This is a 50G made by Gray. This is part of a 2-piece phone. The upper housing here has the Bulldog transmitter. Earlier phones had the original early type transmitter. This has on it the receiver. These were referred to as 2-piece phones, and below the key shelf is the ringer box and induction coil. I will not cover these because this is an entire video all by itself, but I'm making this as just a reference only. This is an incredibly expensive phone. Here is a lock that would typically go in the upper housing of a payphone. This is a 21B for Western Electric. This concludes the video. I hope there's some valuable information for you. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.